I'm Joshua Kemble, and this is going to be a vlog, basically, that I'm going to do in my car on my way home. And I want to start, I used to do these vlogs a lot a year or so back, and then the mount for my camera just kind of broke, and I sort of forgot to actually do that and keep up with these vlogs. And then since I've been doing these live streams like late at night where I'm working on art. Currently, I'm working on comic books where there's like a 5-page pitch that I've been working on the last few days, maybe like the last week, for a script that my sister wrote that had to do with historical figures, and that's been occupying a lot of my time. But why do I want to do this vlog? It's basically like a good way for me to talk out some of my ideas about art or concerns or things that, like, struggles or things that I come across that are like enlightening and helpful to an art career. So basically, let me explain who I am, and then I can kind of get into the vlog and stuff like that. For anyone who's new, I've been a graphic designer, illustrator for over 15 years. I've taught illustration and graphic design at the college level, basically as like an adjunct for like art schools, or in art school, I should say. And then I've spent the last, 6 or 7, going on 7 years as a full-time art director, which has been a real learning curve from, the over a decade of doing illustration and graphic design. It's like you kind of get the hang of that and figure out how to do that and how to navigate that industry, although it's always changing, like all industries. But then, like, doing management, managing artists, managing teams of artists, especially during like the COVID pandemic, has been just an incredible learning curve, full of a lot of ups and downs, and definitely like a lot of learning experiences that are both very hard to go through, and some of them are very profound and cool. So I figure this vlog will be a way for me to kind of work through those things, kind of work out some of the thoughts that I have on art, and also to interact with my community, because a lot of people I really like show up on the live streams, kind of hang out, catch that live. But at the same time, I also like the format of getting more used to and comfortable with talking to the camera when it's just me and you, which is something I need to get more comfortable with. Because I remember the first time I ever started recording and talking to like a camera, it just felt like super uncomfortable and weird and awkward. And as I've gotten more and more used to it, it's like a little bit easier to make these things happen. But still, anyhow, enough of that. Let's get into like some kind of thoughts that are coming across for me. So this is going to be a constant theme of these vlogs. It always was. Scott Circland, my buddy, used to joke. I think at one point he did kind of a joke vlog where when he came down to California to visit me, I kind of appeared in one of his videos, and then his appearance in mine was to like show up in the back of my car, because most of my vlogs were utilizing my commute time to generate content for YouTube, and like kind of talk about it's just another way to kind of express and discuss like art and other things, like life things and stuff like that. So he basically hid in the back of my car as a joke, and then like popped up like during one of my vlogs. So it was done like my regular vlogs, which I used to do all the time, like driving home from work. So anyhow, what's on my mind today is it's Easter weekend, which is pretty cool. So I got off early from work. I'm heading home, and my goal when I get home is to finish up, to try to get as much headway as I can on these pitch pages, so that I can get back to the roughs and thumbnails for my second graphic novel. So my first graphic novel came out in May, or I was gonna say May, my goodness. My first graphic novel came out in January, I believe, and like early January of this year, and it's been moving okay, and it was cool. Like the publisher Marcosia put it out, and during the pandemic, it's just been this weird thing of like trying to kind of navigate and figure out how to market a book and balance that on top of writing the second book, on top of already also navigating just freelance work that comes in. Of course, the concerns, like I'm a dad, and so, you know, when I get home, I want to be present with my son. I also want to be present with my work, and I want to be as ambitious as I can with what I am getting completed, because I have books I want to write and get out there, and I want to get it to readers. So there's all these struggles, and I kind of figured it might be worth kind of touching on this topic, which will come back again and again, because as artists, we're all struggling and trying to kind of figure out how to navigate daily life. And unlike I think I might have thought of when I was younger, like when I was a younger artist and I was trying to get into the industry and just get in a position where I was able to make a living as an artist, which is hard enough. But what didn't happen that I thought would happen when I became a professional, and whatever you want to call that, just was able to make a living, a solid living off of my art. But what didn't dawn on me at that time was that it's not like when you start making a living as an artist, suddenly time magically appears to do the kind of work that I'm interested in doing. And let me tell you what I'm interested in doing. And I think we're all kind of in that boat. A lot of people who watch my channel or are into my work, but it's like I want to make personal stories that aren't necessarily geared towards like some cold, like spelled out market. And that doesn't mean I don't want to market my work. It just means that like after decades, well, I shouldn't say decades yet. I'm not that old yet. But after over a decade of doing professional art, even getting to the point where I was getting hired for my own style, and at the time, like prior to being an art director, I was had really gotten my foot in the door of like t-shirt design and was starting to get known for that and get hired for like my style and even my own concepts. But the thing that I found after a while was just like even doing that, it didn't feel like I was able to do fully authentic work, because I was always trying to kind of cater it to a market or pick the thing that would make the most money. Even though it was sincere, it wasn't the most sincere thing. It wasn't the stuff I wanted to write about. And I was really interested in writing a story about my experience. Like I used to struggle with depression, and I still do, but not to the extent that I did at the time. I struggled with depression and like suicidal ideation almost a decade ago, when my wife and I, before we were married, lived in Portland, Oregon, and just some crazy stuff had happened. Like I had survived being a victim of violent crime in Long Beach, our previous area that we lived, and so like having gotten through that, and then another scenario of being kind of a victim of violent crime, like two kind of back to back within the same year, which was like this kind of insane, crazy story that was very emotional and at the time very traumatizing. Caused a lot of like PTSD and like a lot of confusion about life and a lot of reassessments of like, at the time, like I was a very devout atheist, and so it caused this whole reassessment and rethinking of like my life, and eventually I became a Christian. And so I kind of like, I wanted to write a story about that because it was so emotionally interesting. I hadn't read a lot of stories that talked about issues of mental illness in like a really straightforward, like non-canned and packaged and like put on a shelf kind of way. And so I was wanting to do that, and I was wanting to make autobiographical graphic novels that were like really confessional and honest, And I was just finding that I wasn't getting the time or the ability, like I personally didn't feel like I had the ability to do a lot of my personal projects. I felt like they suffered because I was constantly having to do work for other people anyway, but also like kind of navigate all the different assets and facets of a business, where you're having to like do marketing, you're having to be your own sales team, having to kind of like a sales team, like if you know, famine hits, because the name of the game when you run your own business is feast and famine. Like you're gonna have years of like mass profit, you're gonna have years where you're stagnant, you're gonna, especially starting out, you're gonna have years of loss, and because of those years of loss, you're constantly chasing the next client, the bigger client. Even if you're getting clients, you're always seeking like the big sexy client in the clouds that you can't necessarily land at first, and maybe it's like, if I get this client, it'll cater to this different clientele, or even making your own work, where it's like I was making t-shirts and I was constantly thinking like, well, if this could hit, then I can make this much, and then that could allow me to take some time off to work on my own work. And it just seemed like a if-then kind of scenario that just led to more if-thens, and I just didn't see any progress, really. I mean, I did end up completing a graphic novel prior to the whole Portland thing, but I just got to the point where I realized, like, I don't want to compromise on everything I do. And if I'm in a scenario like that and you don't want to compromise, you really need to be doing creator-owned stuff, because the name of the game, even on the most creative and collaborative projects, on a team project, is compromise. And so one of the things I've realized about myself as a person in the last few years, through having a son, my son is autistic. He's very high functioning. He's like the best student in his general ed class right now, which is kind of a miracle in itself, because when we first found out, we had concerns about like whether he could, you know, function in like a normal classroom and stuff like that. But he's just been so amazing in like the speech therapy and other programs that we've had to have for him, like ABA and all that fun stuff. Really, he just took to it and has soared and done so well. I'm so proud of him. He's my son. It makes me really proud. But what's interesting is learning more about autism and sort of symptoms of autism. I've come to the conclusion, like I've started to come to the realization that I'm probably autistic, and I've mentioned this on some live streams, because I just have a lot of, I relate like a lot to my son, and particularly to things in my son that are traits of autism. And it's not like one of those things where I feel like I'm ticking off like 3 of the boxes, so I'm like, oh, I have a runny nose, therefore I must have cancer or something. It's not like that kind of jumping to conclusions kind of thing. It's more like when I look at the list of symptoms that people show when they have autism, it's like I'm checking off way too many boxes for it to possibly be a thing. So that's something that I've even considered possibly recently, maybe going and getting a test for it, but I wouldn't even know where to start, because autism in adults is a whole different bag of worms than it is for kids, and once again, it's just like a whole thing I'd have to look into, and if it didn't cost a bunch of money, it might be interesting for my own curiosity's sake to kind of see if my suspicion, my conviction about that's true, because I definitely, from just experiencing that with my son, think that that's probably part of my personality, and I don't feel like embarrassed about it. I just think that's probably part of how I'm wired, and so that's an interesting realization that I've come across in the last 7 years that my son's been around. So wow, speaking of autism, it's like I just went on a total tangent way away from the topic. But so the point being, I think partially because that is part of my personality as well, I I felt really compelled and interested in kind of doing my own stories and having a project that I could control entirely, because I like the ability to kind of obsess and control a story, and I like authentic stories, and I think that might even tie into, I think that ties into what makes a story strong, but it also might tie a little bit into my own like kind of probably autism, because I have issues dealing with like mistruth and I definitely am pretty. I respond really positively to authenticity. I'm totally rambling. So I'm still getting comfortable talking to the camera. And then aside from that, I'm like really exhausted from work, heading home. I'm excited about getting home. I'm also trying to figure out how I'm going to have the energy to work on what I need to work on. Anyhow, so long story short, that's part of why I took a gig as a full-time art director, was to buy myself a consistent schedule with a predictable income and benefits, and that would allow me to kind of carve out specific periods of time in order to work on comics, and it's actually worked. It's taken quite a few years. It took about 5 years, but from start to finish, I think about that long, to do my first graphic novel, which was 122 pages, black and white, and it's a very heartfelt story about that experience that I was talking about before in Portland. So needless to say, that's cool, but one of the downsides, so there's a positive to, and I feel very blessed and fortunate to be making a living as an artist, especially in these times. Like it's rough for a lot of people, and while I could easily look at artists that are like way famous and like way further along on like in the success in their careers, I can also see that there's a lot of artists that would really envy where I'm at, because I'm able to make a living at it. Like, art bought me a house, which is really cool. I have a really good family. I have a lot of really great things going on in my life, and that's not bragging. I'm trying to look at positives as well as like struggles and stuff like that in my life, because I think that's really important for being able to see your life objectively. Like, I think because I'm also prone to depression, that's why I wrote a whole book about it. I can go down these rabbit holes where I get kind of down on any successes I've had, or I look at successes I've had and kind of try to diminish them because they're not as big of successes as I would like, and that can kind of take away your agency. Like, if you constantly look to things that you don't have or things that haven't occurred, it's kind of a fruitless pursuit, because it's like you're constantly going to be looking at the whole. It's like you're constantly looking at the water you don't have in your glass as opposed to looking at the water you do have. Whether you're viewing it as half empty or half full, it's like if there is any water in your glass, you've got to be thankful that it's not the empty glass, because a lot of people get dealt a really bad hand in life, and frankly don't even have the option to have water in their glass, right? So if you got anything going, it's like, I think it's important to be objective about that, and also just to be thankful for the people around you and the people that do care, and kind of act within your life. So anyhow, totally rambling, but there is a point, I think. I don't know, you gotta bear with me. But anyhow, so like today I'm trying to get home. I'm trying to get working on this next book. I'm trying to think about how I'm going to gauge, like, so I need to make a second graphic novel, and I want to try to make it within a year, realistically maybe a year and a half. And I also realized the importance of having pitches going around by my literary agent, because it's my first like year of like solidly having a lit agent, and I need to take advantage of that. Like the fact that she has access to multiple publishers and stuff like that. Like it's important for me to take advantage of that scenario, not in like an exploitative way, but just whenever you have an opportunity, I think as an artist, that could potentially go well, that you feel pretty convicted about, like you need to chase those opportunities. And it's not like you need to be running around like a chicken with your head cut off or something, but it's like the idea of if you have an opportunity present itself and you have the will and ability to pursue it, you should pursue it. And so that's one of the reasons I kind of halted working on the second book for a little bit, because it's only 5 pages, and those will take a while, and they will kind of hold back the progress of the second book. But if I can do it right and have that pitch out, and that's a pitch for a whole graphic novel, that can be being shopped around, which is a long process anyway. Like shopping a book can be anywhere from from what I've read, and keep in mind I'm like completely new to the literary agent side of things. I've worked for publishers ranging from like Random House to like Weldon Owen, Scholastic, like all these different variety of publishers, so I'm familiar with like working with like an art director at a publishing house or an author or something like that. But my own written, like stuff I've written and illustrated myself, and dealing with a literary agent who's representing me and like doing the pitch process for me once we have a pitch packet developed is like an entirely new thing. And actually I think technically it's not even called a pitch. Like that's like Hollywood. In publishing, I think it's just called like a proposal. And I'm still learning the vocabulary too. But point being, like while I'm new to this whole thing, I do realize like the advantage of when I'm working on a second book, which I do have a deal for, because my first graphic novel, 2 stories, like I said at the top, it's being published by Marcosia, and Marcosia kind of did a 2-book deal that has a fairly flexible deadline for the second book. I think realizing just the amount of work that it's going to be to do, and also being an indie, indies are usually a little more flexible with release dates. But anyhow, in theory, it's like I need to get that second book out, but while I'm working on the second book, wouldn't it be great if, the stars were aligning like a 3rd book deal so that I'd have something to instantly jump to once 2 stories is completed? So rather than like have that moment where I like pause and rest on my laurels and stuff, I'll in theory have like two things going on. But the downside is it's setting me back on the work habit and where I was at on book 2, and so my hope is to kind of clear some time to make that work. So here's my big conundrum is like I need to figure out strategies to balance where I'm able to get a healthy amount of sleep, which I currently don't get, and I need to be able to create work, and also be like 110% at my day job as well as an art director, because I enjoy that position and I enjoy where I work. So it's an interesting thing, like trying to figure out like having a bunch of irons in the fire, and thinking about my own free time and how I utilize time, and realizing like my time is actually pretty minimal, and so how can I take advantage of like the minimal time that I have. So that's been on my mind, and part of what I do on these drives is like I'll kind of talk through what I need to get done in order to get things done, and I guess that's kind of maybe like a piece of advice or whatever, or maybe it's just more of a question, like as artists, what do you guys do to kind of navigate the paid projects, even if it's paid personal projects, the big wild dream projects, which often don't have necessarily like the biggest paycheck always attached to it, but if they succeed, they'll have a much bigger reward and potentially a bigger financial reward for kind of investing in like a long-term thing, like building your own IP, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, how do you guys deal with navigating that? And then also, like, does it help for you guys as artists or as creatives or as just creative people to go through like lists of like what you need to do and just kind of isolate it based on priority? Because right now I feel like I am like an overloaded system, and so I'm having to triage and figure out like what is my highest priority. I can tell right now, like usually at this point in my commute, I'm almost home. It's been fairly short, although I started this video like about middle commute, but I'm surprised I haven't hit much traffic. And for those of you who aren't aware, it's like I live in the LA area, on the very far outskirts of LA County, and that means massive amounts of traffic. So anyway, not trying to get sympathy, just trying to kind of reintroduce people to the, you know, myself and these vlogs and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's that, like, you know, do you guys do you make lists? Like for me, I find that really helpful to kind of even verbally like do a vlog or something like this where I'm kind of working through like what I need to accomplish. Anyhow, point being, doing the triage, like the mental triage. Actually, I don't know if that's been used. I should look into if that's been used, and if not, start using the word mental triage. But yeah, so like that's what I'm kind of doing is like I realize like yesterday I was up like super late working on a live stream, and I just you know probably went to bed at like 4 in the morning, and today I worked from like 8 to, and then we got off early, so around 3, and so now it's about 4:30ish, so it's been about it, like, you know, it's about an hour and a half each way on a commute, give or take traffic. So right now it's like, even though usually at this point in my commute when I'm about home, which is where I'm at right now, I'm like very close to getting home, and I was about to change lanes, but the guy to my right was like speeding Gonzalez, so I didn't want to get hit. So yeah, so that's what I'm trying to kind of figure out is like, oh, okay, sorry, I was getting distracted by speedy guy over there. So I think that my best course of action right now is going to be to probably go home. I think I'm going to need to take a nap for sure, because it's like, thinking about it, I usually don't prioritize sleep, but I definitely think like if I just try to go in and like power through doing art after getting 4 hours of sleep, you know, and then working, you know, my day job and stuff, I don't think I'm gonna last. So that's, I think, easy priority number 1. Can't have it be too long of a nap. It'll be a little power nap, that's my guess. This is what I'm gonna try to do. And then I think when I wake up, I'm gonna hang with my kid, you know, have fun with them, with the family. And then I will probably work on carving away at this little 5-page pitch, which I think I'm almost done with page 3. And if I can, maybe get a good chunk of page 4 going after doing the flat colors for 3 too, because we're pitching both a color and a black and white version, which you can see like sneak previews of that on my Instagram at Joshua Kemble. So yeah, so that's what I'm kind of thinking, but I don't know if this video is useful to you guys or anything like that. I hope all is well with all of you. I hope that you're having a creative day, that you're able to kind of overcome whatever kind of mental triage that you're having to do in your own lives with, like, you know, the crazy things we're all juggling amid a mass global pandemic. I hope everybody's good out there, and if you like this video, if you were interested in these vlogs, actually let me know in the comments, like should I bring these vlogs back? I have no idea. Is it too much? Like, is it too much to have like a vlog on my channel coming up and then later in the day like have like a live stream? I feel like it might serve two functions, but sadly it's probably going to be about the same content. We'll see. I don't know, but I definitely do think I want to bring these back, and I think I'll just post them as I do them, so that basically it you know, keeps people up to date, keeps content going to my channel, keeps providing you guys content. But that's my thoughts on it, and I know my thoughts. I'm curious what your thoughts are.